Being the President of the United States comes with an immense amount of pressure, and let's be real, profound physical danger. But today we're not focusing on the tragedies. Instead, we're diving into the incredible, unexpected, and honestly, sometimes downright bizarre reasons why US presidents have actually survived deadly attacks. Here's a quick look at how we're breaking this down today. First, a very dangerous job. Second, sheer luck and dud weapons. Third, saved by bizarre objects. Fourth, quick action and the Secret Service. Fifth, surviving shooters but not doctors. And finally, the fine line of history. Alright, Section 1. A very dangerous job. So, while the nation has deeply mourned the tragic losses of leaders like Abraham Lincoln in 1865 and John F. Kennedy in 1963, the stories of those who made it out alive are just as impactful. History is often written by the absolute narrowest of margins, and as you'll see, the unbelievable reasons these presidents survived shape our historical timeline just as much as the tragedies do. Which brings us to Section 2, sheer luck and dud weapons. Just think about the sheer statistical improbability of what happened to our 7th president, Andrew Jackson, back in January of 1835. Jackson was leaving a funeral at the U.S. Capitol when an unemployed house painter named Richard Lawrence walked right up to him. Lawrence pulled out a pistol, aimed it directly at Jackson, and pulled the trigger. But the weapon simply misfired. Now Lawrence wasn't done. He immediately pulled out a completely separate second pistol and fired again. And incredibly, that second weapon also misfired. Can you imagine the tension of that exact moment? Witnesses standing right there described the sound of both pistols misfiring as resembling a small explosion. They heard the violent pop, they saw the confrontation, but miraculously, no bullets actually fired. Neither shot struck Jackson. And this moment perfectly captures the intense personality of Andrew Jackson. Totally unharmed and famously known for his fiery temper, Jackson didn't run for cover. No, he immediately charged at Lawrence, using his own walking cane to violently defend himself. Bystanders, which wildly enough actually included the famous congressman and folk hero Davy Crockett, had to jump in to subdue Lawrence, and Jackson just walked away, completely fine. Now, this crazy pattern of sheer luck jumped forward 170 years to May of 2005. President George W. Bush was visiting Tbilisi, Georgia, giving a speech to a massive crowd. Out of nowhere, an assailant threw a live hand grenade directly at the president, but just like Jackson's misfiring pistols, the explosive simply failed to detonate. A live grenade thrown right in the middle of a speech turned into nothing more than a heavy rock, just because of a mechanical failure. Bush remained completely uninjured. Let's move on to Section 3, saved by bizarre objects. In October 1912, Theodore Roosevelt was shot directly in the right side of his chest at close range, but the bullet didn't make it to his heart. Why? Because it was stopped by a massive, thick 50-page speech manuscript which was folded in half inside his breast pocket, tucked right next to a metal case for his glasses. Those objects, acting as improvised body armor, completely slowed the bullet's momentum, leading to what has to be one of the most astonishing sequences of events in political history. Instead of panicking after being shot, Roosevelt actually commanded the crowd to show mercy to his shooter, to restore order. Then, and this is just wild, still bleeding, with a bullet lodged inside of him, Roosevelt went ahead to the auditorium and actually delivered that same 50-page, 1-hour-long speech. Only after he finished did he finally allow doctors to take him to the hospital. They eventually decided it was safer to just leave the bullet in, and Roosevelt lived the rest of his life with it right there in his chest. On to Section 4, Quick Action and the Secret Service. Rapid interventions and missed shots have changed the course of history so many times. Back in 1950, Harry Truman survived simply because guards engaged in a lethal gunfight at the Blair House to stop 2 attackers. Jump to September 1975. Gerald Ford survived 2 completely separate assassination attempts within just a few weeks of each other in California, heavily aided by quick interventions that subdued the shooters. And we see this continuing right into recent history with Donald Trump. In 2016, an attempt by a man trying to grab an officer's gun at a rally was immediately thwarted by law enforcement, and then in 2024, a shooter grazed his ear before being instantly neutralized by a Secret Service agent. But even with the absolute best security in the world, the margins of survival can literally be just 1 inch. In March 1981, President Ronald Reagan was leaving a hotel in Washington, D.C. when John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 bullets. Secret Service agents reacted instantaneously, violently shoving the president into his armored limousine. That lightning-fast action undoubtedly saved his life, but one bullet still managed to slip through, hitting Reagan under his left armpit. It ultimately stopped just 1 single inch away from his heart. Literally, 1 inch was the difference between an assassination and a survival. Section 5. Surviving shooters, not doctors. Now we have to look at the incredibly grim irony of the 20th president, James A. Garfield, in 1881. When he was attacked at a railroad station, he actually survived the initial trauma of being shot in the arm and the abdomen. The wounds themselves did not kill him right away. The real tragedy is what happened next. Totally unaware of modern aseptic techniques, his doctors continuously probed his open wounds with unsterilized instruments and even their bare hands, frantically searching for the bullet. So Garfield actually survived the shooter, but died in agonizing pain 79 days later from fatal infections caused directly by his own medical care. It's a truly heartbreaking historical irony. And finally, Section 6, the fine line of history. So how much of American history was rewritten by a single dud weapon or a folded piece of paper? When we study history, it's so easy to view it as this grand, inevitable march of time and policy. But as we've explored today, destiny is incredibly fragile, isn't it? A misfiring pistol in 1835, a dud grenade in 2005, a 50-page manuscript acting as Kevlar, or a bullet stopping just 1 inch from a beating heart. These tiny, microscopic moments, these fractions of a second and millimeters of space, have completely dictated the leadership in the direction of a nation. It really makes you wonder just how easily the history books could have told a completely different story. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history you think you know.